promise to myself and keep that promise. And it doesn't matter how badly the writing goes. It doesn't matter what news I just got from my agent. It doesn't matter how my business is doing. It doesn't matter what the stock market's doing. It doesn't matter what mean thing somebody just said about me online. It doesn't matter if my wife and I are getting along. It doesn't matter if the kids are like, if I have something that every day, if I do it, I'm proud of myself for doing it. I got endorphins from doing it. I got healthier from doing it. I got some time away from the screen or work or sitting in a chair from it. Like, that's hugely important. And it's so easy, and it's something that's up to you. I've never like gone for a run and then like not made it back, There's lots of days where I don't want to do it, but I'm always glad that I did it.
Almost all great leaders, great athletes, great philosophers have been tough.
Yeah.
What do you mean by tough?
I mean that they've gone through something. Churchill talked about how, he says, every prophet, every sort of great leader, great person, he said they're of society, but then they're sent into the wilderness, right? There's some period where their work is unpopular, where their ideas aren't accepted, where they're struggling to make ends meet, or there's a controversy or whatever. Churchill spends like 33 to 39 basically out of public life, sort of persona non grata. And he says that it's in this wilderness, he says, where psychic dynamite is made. And his point is that it's in that struggling, in not having everyone listen to you, not getting what you want, not having everything at the push of a button, that forces you to really refine what you think, forces you to grow and change and adapt. Steve Jobs' time in the wilderness is when he gets fired from Apple, and he has to go and he starts these other companies, and he has to look in the mirror and go, how did I get fired from the company that I started? And so we all have to have that period where we are wrestling with our demons or a demon, and it's in conquering that, changing from that we bring back to whatever we're doing, I think, a greater sense of purpose and clarity, and then hopefully, better skills.
And those moments make us confront our egos.
Yes. Yeah, there's an ego death in losing, being rejected, realizing you're not what you thought you were, or it's not going the way that you thought it was going to go. And, ideally you want to learn that earlier and cheaper. You don't want to get to the very top and have it all come crashing down and have to start over, right? There were probably many times along Steve Jobs' journey where maybe it was a tough meeting, or an investor, laid out all the issues to his face, or there was an article, right? There were many moments where he could have learned that lesson in a way that was less calamitous than getting fired, getting thrown out. Sometimes that's what people need. Sometimes you got to blow your life up, but it's better that it's better that you listen. I've said this before, but it's like, life is always sort of whispering feedback to you. And if you don't listen to it, at some point it has to hold you down and scream it in your face. And that's avoidable.
How do you tune into that voice whispering?
It's for the Stoics, it was like this kind of nightly or daily conversation with the self. This is the art of journaling. This is what Marcus Aurelius is doing in Meditations. He's having a conversation with himself. The most powerful man in the world. No one could tell him what to do. But he, in the pages of what's become Meditations, is going, why are you like this? Why are you doing this? You know better than this. Remember what so-and-so said. Remember the examples of all these people that you love, that have inspired you, that you're trying to be like. Try to get back on the path, trying to define what that path is. And I think a process of really holding yourself accountable somehow, whether it's a journal, maybe it's quarterly meetings with a coach or an advisor or a board of directors, Maybe it's long walks where you think about these things. There's lots of ways to do it, but I think it's the ability to reflect and evaluate and adjust based on this information. That's what that voice is, right? The information is there. Maybe deep down we know it, but we go on, it'd be uncomfortable, it'd be painful, maybe it wouldn't work. But you gotta be doing that work. And again, the sort of maintenance is gonna be cheaper and easier than the total rebuild.
This third point, I believe it was, of wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
I've been asking myself a lot recently. I sit and have conversations with some incredibly smart people, yourself included, and I gain so much from it.
Sure.
And I think to myself, what I should really be doing is writing more. What has been the value of writing on your life? The unobvious stuff, the unobvious upsides that you've experienced from writing?
Nothing clarifies what you think quite like the practice or the exercise of writing something down. At Amazon, if you want to launch a new project, or you're suggesting a change, if you want to call a meeting, you have to write it out. You have to create a written agenda. In some cases, you have to write a press release for that thing you're proposing. You have to write like a written pitch for the whole thing. And it's not so much for the communicating it to the other people, but it's also about the forcing you to go through the process of figuring out what you think and why, and the problems with it, the contradictions of it. Like, being forced to write it down is just so different than it just bouncing around in your head or riffing on it. There's just something very, very powerful about writing. And anyone that sat down to write a book, I think you think, well, I know this better than anyone. I'm really excited about it. Then you sit down and that kind of enthusiasm or interest, that can get you like the first 10 pages. And then you just go you're just spent. And then you go, well, what comes next and how do they build on each other? You have to have a plan. You have to have a system, a structure. You have to have solved the whole thing before you can write it. You can't just figure it out on the fly, right? The stream of consciousness stuff, it doesn't work. And so writing is just really, really powerful. I'm a huge believer in all these other mediums, and I make content in all these other mediums, but I write the ideas first. And it comes from the books. The books is the synthesis of all of it. And then if I'm doing a TikTok or Instagram or an article, it's all broken out from the process of having spent many, many, many hours sitting and thinking about and trying to come up with the best way of expressing this very complicated idea. And, the process now, I've been doing the Daily Stoic. So I wrote the book in 2015. So it's 1 page a day. So I wrote 366 in one sitting. And then the day I finished the book, I said, I'm just going to keep going. I'm just going to do one a day that we'll put out in the email and the podcast. And so I've been doing that every day for 8 years.
Wow.
And that's where my understanding of Stoicism, obviously I knew about Stoicism. I'd written books about it before. I'd read about it a lot. But the process of having to produce and polish and edit and work on and read and, record this one thing every day has been transformative for me as a person. The fact that, millions of people have read them now and listened to them and watched them all over the world, that's just even if it was never published, that process would have transformed my life. So in a world where, you can easily in 2 seconds create high res, immediately shareable video, the ease of that is almost the trap, right? Writing is hard and always will be hard. And maybe that's why it's good.
In the 800 days there, you've got a lot of data back on the types of things that resonate with people, the subject matter that seems to speak to their most popular sufferings, concerns, anxieties.
Sure.
What have you learned about the things people are struggling with the most and the answers they seek the most?
That's a good question. I don't think about that so much. I try to just follow where it's taking me, and I'm just always trying to make stuff. But it is interesting to think that people have had the same problems for 2,000 years, you know? Like, on its face, Marcus Aurelius' meditations should be inaccessible, impractical, incomprehensible. Like, you have the most powerful man on earth, the emperor of Rome, literally worshipped as a god, you know, head of the most powerful army, steeped in philosophy and rhetoric and all these ancient ideas, writing probably on the front lines of the battlefield, like with the Roman army in his tent, you know, in Greek. He was writing in Greek to himself, never intending it to be published, probably be mortified that it ever was published. And he's writing it for himself. Like, he's writing notes that are so specific that a lot of them we don't even know what they mean. He's like, remember that toll operator, you know, in insert, you know, province of the Roman Empire, or remember that thing that so-and-so said to you? Like, a lot of them are kind of notes like that. So we know it wasn't for you and I at all. This is like literally the most specific book you could imagine. And somehow it is timeless and universal. Because as different and strange and surreal as his life and experience is, it's fundamentally not that different than yours and mine.
What do those books say about, and what does Stoicism say about how we confront unexpected crises in our lives that we are clearly not responsible for? You know, a cancer diagnosis, we get fired from work, something else bad happens that we were not responsible for.
To me, the essence of Stoicism is the idea that we don't control what has happened, but we control how we respond to what happens. And so, you know, Marcus's idea, which I have tattooed on my arm, the obstacle is the way, you know, he says, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. He's saying that.
Say that again.
The impediment to action advances action.
The impediment to action advances action.
What stands in the way becomes the way. He's saying that, you know, basically it's like nothing can actually stop us from what we're trying to do because we can accommodate and adjust and adapt. He says we can convert obstacles to our own purposes. Basically, what he's saying is that stuff happens, stuff we dread having happened, that we did everything in our power to prevent from happening. That's not our fault. It's totally screwed up. It's painful, all of that. But it does happen, right? And he says, he's basically saying that now that it's happened, what opportunity does it present you? And it doesn't mean, oh, hey, you know, your mother died. That's great for your business. That's not what he's saying. Like, he's not saying, oh, this is wonderful. But he's saying that this tragic, terrible, frustrating, painful thing happened. There are opportunities in that for you to step up, to grow, to be there for other people, to illustrate or demonstrate the Stoic virtues.
In moments of crisis in like business, I always think you have a couple of types of people. Say this room is on fire. Mm-hmm. Person A, paralyzed with fear, saying nothing.
Yeah.
Person B, screaming.
Sure.
Also unhelpful, we're going to die. Person C knows the room is on fire, doesn't need to say the room is on fire, totally focused on getting out of the room.
Yes.
And it's a different way to handle crisis. Some people just default to practical.
Well, maybe there's another person there, to extend this analogy, who helps those other people.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? Like the idea is the thing is happening. What is it going to draw out of you? Who are you going to be in response to that thing happening? That's what the obstacle is the way it means. It's not that it's great that the room is on fire. It's that the room being on fire presents you a set of choices.
How do I become the person who is going to survive the fire because I'm focused not on the fact that the room is on fire? I mean, I'm aware of that. I'm not denying the reality of the burning room, but I'm using my energy on what I can control, which is getting myself and these other people out of the room. Is it a practice? Is it like going to the gym? some people just seem to have it. You know,
Yeah.
childhood trauma seems to play into that as well, because some people just have a pessimistic attitude to things and they worry and panic.
But that is kind of the practice, right? Like what they have been